Vieux Carré, the heart of one of the United States' major metropolitan areas. The Vieux Carré, 100 square blocks, nearly 260 acres, population about 5,500, and a national treasure. It's New Orleans' origin and raison d'etre. But the Vieux Carré transcends one city's history. The old square seduces the world. She beckons, and they come. And it's her fragile charm which draws people closer that is causing concern among those most protected of the French Quarter's continued distinctive existence. Raindrops dripping from the balcony. It feels the same to me. Fog so heavy you can almost hold it in your hand. Gotta be from here to understand. Vieux Carré, it's been so long. Vieux Carré, tout ensemble. Tout ensemble, all together, the whole. It's more than just a French phrase, it's the law, a concept established by the Louisiana State Supreme Court in 1941 to safeguard what began in the early 1700s. French-Canadian Jean-Baptiste Lemoyne, Sieur de Bienville, founded the city of New Orleans in 1718, accompanied by convicts, carpenters, and Canadians. Bienville cut the first cane to open a passageway through dense wilderness and begin clearing the area that would be laid out as the Vieux Carré 5 years later. The location was questionable, swampy, mosquito-infested, but it provided a crucial trade link from the Mississippi River to the Gulf of Mexico. The chief engineer of Louisiana, Blanc de la Tour, drew up a plan to be executed by Adrien Dupaga, a grid of 66 squares and a rectangle with a central square. Building wasn't easy, prompting one visitor, Father Charlevoix, to write in December 1721, "Of the present conditions of New Orleans, 200 people are camped on the banks of a great river, while waiting to have a plan drawn for them that they might have some houses built. Monsieur Dupaga showed me a plan. It will not be as easy to execute as it was to draw on paper." But the plan took shape and held for more than 250 years.
The French Quarter was laid out in 1723. Its layout is that which we see right now. It is essentially the streets, their location and proximity to each other, the Place d'Armes, which is now Jackson Square. The buildings we see now, substantially built in the early 19th century, was allowed to succumb to a long Sabbath of decay in the late 19th century, was rediscovered in the early 20th century. The beauty is that we are using it in many respects, the old city, today as it was used then. And it is amazing that the French Quarter can accommodate different centuries, different generations, waves of immigration and different economic circumstances and times and waves. The current wave of immigrants, I guess some people would see as the tourists.
Tourism in the Vieux Carré is welcomed unconditionally by some, with strong reservations by others. It is recognized that such a unique place will attract visitors, and the revenue generated from their jaunts to the quarter is eagerly accepted. But concern is mounting that the Vieux Carré, the city's first neighborhood, is losing the residential character that is a vital part of the tout ensemble of the quarter, and that commercialism is taking over. The Vieux Carré has lived a glorious life of prosperity and a seedy existence of neglect and decay. The Gilded Age of pre-Civil War allowed the Creoles of the quarter to enjoy booming trade as much as the Americans who settled upriver across Canal Street. Beautifully furnished homes provided a lavish and romantic lifestyle. Gaiety, song, music, and tasty cuisine painted the Creole legend. But the Civil War and Reconstruction and waves of immigrants, largely Italian, changed the complexion of the Vieux Carré. The economy declined. Buildings fell into ruin. Early 20th century writer Grace King describes how where once Creole belles with satin-shod little feet would trip up to the salon of that night's ball, now instead saw the washerwoman hanging her clothes in the courtyard while her brood of children sprawled on the floor around her. Benevolent neglect befell the buildings of the Vieux Carré. They were not demolished, they were ignored. A move in 1895 to destroy the presbytere and cabildo to make way for a new courthouse was thwarted. But 10 years later, a square block on Royal Street was raised to erect a new court's building. Still, a new consciousness was developing, a lusty appreciation of the shabby structures in the French Quarter, heated by the burning of the French Opera House in 1919. Artists and writers like Lyle Saxon and Sherwood Anderson, who came to live in the Vieux Carré because it was cheap, stirred a fervent movement for preservation. Elizabeth Werlein's determined efforts led to the creation of the Vieux Carré Commission in 1937. Longtime Vieux Carré resident and activist Mary Morrison.
Mrs. Werlein was really responsible for the passage of that 1936 state law which empowered the city of New Orleans to set up a regulatory body. In 1924, there had been sort of an attempt to set up some sort of a commission. That is referred to in the 1936 state law. You see, there's a distinction between what the Vieux Carré Commission covers and how we are located on the National Register of Historic Places. They have us all the way from Canal across Esplanade to the depth of one lot. That's the way we are on the National Register, and from Rampart to the river.
For many, many years, the Vieux Carré Commission was a rather weak group, politically oriented, and really did very little. We encouraged it to do more important things, and whenever there was anything in court, we usually helped it along and supported them.
We, at the Vieux Carré Commission, inspect for architectural treatment changes that are inappropriate, as well as alerting other departments and agencies to health code violations, zoning violations, violations of other law. The preservation by design began in 1936. Has in the 50 years it been equal in its treatment throughout those times? No. I think that the caution and care has ebbed and flowed.
The Vieux Carré Commission, whose jurisdiction is bounded by Iberville and Rampart Streets, Esplanade Avenue, and the river, and whose authority is limited to building exteriors, faced court challenges soon after it was established, leading to the 1941 Louisiana State Supreme Court concept of tout ensemble, protecting the total environment of the quarter, the height and color of buildings, materials used, the width of streets, size of blocks, open space, and also the people and their lifestyles. The court said that preservation of the Vieux Carré worked for the benefit of the people of New Orleans generally and went beyond any one individual's private concern. But in 1946, the City Council of New Orleans exempt non-historic properties from the concept of tout ensemble. 18 years and another court battle later, that exemption was struck down, but so were several buildings. In their place, hotels and parking facilities. The Vieux Carré has been likened to a kaleidoscope. To preserve it, you've got to keep it moving. The French Quarter, or Quarters, as many New Orleanians call it, is a living neighborhood full of days and memories past, historic buildings still standing, and a sense of place ever evolving.
The cultural heart of the quarter is the fact that it's a neighborhood. It is not a museum piece. It's certainly not something that is dead or died years ago. It's something that continues to live and to breathe and to grow. There is a delicate balance. There's an ecology that exists down here. And that ecology that sometimes creates a tension between the neighborhood, the residential aspect of the quarter, and the commercial aspect of the quarter. Some people feel that the commercial aspect is growing too quickly.
It was much more of a community than it is now. There have been changes in that regard. There were a lot of newcomers here from other states who loved the quarter, and we all banded together. And then not only that, there were just so many small establishments, little groceries and little amenities like that where people got together. And so it was really a very neighborly sort of situation.
The quarter at that time was a family quarter. You had families that would gather together in the evening to relax, and they'd be sitting on the porch. And I, as a priest, wanted to know everybody. I just had to walk down the street and introduce myself, and the family was there, you know, it was fantastic.
You could walk down Bourbon Street, and this was the street where they say jazz was born, and you knew everybody from Canal Street to St. Peter Street, with all of the clubs there, Louis Prima and all of the great musicians that came out of this city right there. This was home. I mean, this was home. You know, you knew everybody. Everybody was a family around here.
Oh,
If God's sake, if your family wasn't there, you could always go someplace else. But I think the quarter is changing with times. It's keeping up with the times. I mean, after all, I don't think that the people that come here as visitors would be interested in seeing the kind of things and people we're talking about, but they're interested in seeing the things that are new around here. And
It's the all-togetherness that makes the French Quarter really one of the unique parts of America. I guess you could find this combination in maybe 2 or 3 other cities and parts of those cities, but it's a very, very rare bird indeed. What I'm hoping is that it does not become an endangered species.
If any one area in the nation has been studied, it's the Vieux Carré of New Orleans. Land use, proposed land use, population statistics, traffic patterns and congestion, socioeconomic data, and much more have been compiled over the years, and it's all revealed that residences from the years 1961 to 1981 have gone down by 17%. Gift and T-shirt shops up 229%. 110 of those are T-shirt shops. Antique shops between 1961 and 1981 up 51.4%. Business offices down 14.8%. Bars and lounges are up 36.5%, and restaurants are up 68.6%. Color coding these changes, considering a 46-year period from 1940 to 1986. In 1940, the gift shops in the Vieux Carré are those in red. Neighborhood services like groceries and laundries and pharmacies are in blue. 46 years later, the colors change. In 1968, a moratorium on new hotel construction was imposed. The reason? Between 1965 and 69, 1,134 hotel rooms were added. Guest houses have now replaced the new hotels. Between 1940 and 1986, the residential demographics declined as the hotel and guest room numbers surged, with today's total of both hotel and guest rooms standing at more than 3,500 in the Vieux Carré.
When I first moved here, there were many, many more families with children. It was easy to get into school, and you'd see more kids in the neighborhood playing. I think that's probably the worst part of loss of neighborhood that we've seen over the past years. I think the other change I've seen is so many businesses that once were meant to take care of the neighborhoods have slowly gone out of business or have become commercial on a more tourist basis. And in the commercial areas, we've seen an expansion of them, in which things that were once residential are now shops or restaurants or something else.
Mr. President, I'll certainly follow the suggestion of the chair. I have no problem with that at all. I would just like to point out that I was trying...
Councilman Mike Early has a fight on his hands. He wants to create a new board that would give the yay or nay, in an advisory capacity only, to proposed uses of property in the Vieux Carré. There are those who agree.
We are supporting this legislation, not arguing the merits of the constitutionality or the fact that it may not be the best mousetrap to achieve the end. We're dealing with the raw economics of our hotel visitors, hoping that the French Quarter remains a good place for them to stay, a desirable place for them to stay when they come to the French Quarter.
There are those who oppose.
We urge you to reject Councilman Early's attempt to gentrify and sterilize the heart of the city that care for God.
Business is as much a part of the tout ensemble of the Vieux Carré as is the architectural mix. But there are boundaries to be met and enforcement needed to see these limits are not overstepped.
It's the #1 tourist attraction in the city right now. And we need it, and we need to preserve what people remember and what writers want to write about. And if we don't preserve it, then we're going to wind up killing the goose that lays the golden egg right now.
I believe New Orleans, more than any other probably place in the world, has the potential to develop cultural tourism, because the culture of this city, of this place, of the Vieux Carré, of the Mississippi River, of the jazz music, of the food we eat, all of those things you cannot find anywhere else in the world except here.
Mayor of New Orleans, Sidney Barthélemy, at a symposium on culture and tourism in New Orleans, specifically on how it relates to the Vieux Carré. Symposium organizer Anne Masson.
New Orleans has somewhat of a reputation of being a fun and party town, and we're not trying to get rid of that, but we think that it's now time to tell everyone out there, all of the travelers and travel writers and such, that we are also very rich and diverse in our cultural heritage.
Also at the symposium, Georges Marcoux and Russell Wright. They conducted the 1968 Vieux Carré demonstration study, heralded as the most scrutinizing look ever at the Vieux Carré. At the time of that study, the Second Battle of New Orleans was raging, the proposed elevated riverfront expressway. It would have run along the river behind Jackson Square and destroyed the character of the Vieux Carré, cried the vocal opponents, who won. Then Secretary of Transportation John Volpe killed the project in the summer of '69. Ray Boudreau worked hard for that roadway's demise.
We shouldn't put a barrier. We should eliminate those existing visual and physical barriers between the developed area and the river, and certainly not put any new ones.
Boudreau speaks for some Vieux Carré residents who are now resisting the Aquarium of the Americas that's going to be constructed on the site of the Bienville Street wharves.
Scale of human activities, as well as the small scale of the building. It's absolutely essential if you're going to maintain the so-called distinctive character. This is one of the reasons I think that the aquarium, that kind of a facility, is totally inappropriate for this area, totally out of scale.
I think a lot of us feel that tearing down 10 metal buildings for 16 acres that block the riverfront and open that into green space and an aquarium will do nothing but enhance the French Quarter. We'll be able to bring green space, promenade, river, back to the area where we think it belongs.
We fought for 10 years to defeat that proposed expressway along the riverfront, and it is really exasperating and frustrating to accept the fact that we saved that land for this thing.
65% of the people that live down here, not the businesses, but people who live and vote down here, voted they wanted an aquarium. The Vieux Carré Commission has approved the aquarium. We have tremendous support from people that really want this to happen.
Everyone can love the quarter differently without anybody loving it less.
Feelings about the Vieux Carré have been stirred through the years with words and images. Sherwood Anderson, William Faulkner, Tennessee Williams, Truman Capote lived and wrote in the Vieux Carré about the Vieux Carré. Present-day quarter resident, Louisiana Congresswoman Lindy Boggs.
I love living here. I love the house. I love the neighborhood. And it's the ambiance in the early morning is, I'm sure, that of the 18th, early 19th century. The mix of residence and commerce and light industry has always been what's made this a living, breathing neighborhood. And I think it has to be kept that way. And you can't let commercialization outpace the residential section.
Say New Orleans, and the likely response is, food, music, and Bourbon Street. But do the visitors really get what they come for? The studies show that nearly half of the visitors surveyed felt the Vieux Carré was too commercial, but most people enjoyed their visit. 2 out of 3 said the quarter was the primary reason for their visit to New Orleans. Most local residents surveyed said that they visited the Vieux Carré about once a month. Their greatest concerns: parking, dirt and litter, and crime. Visitors to the Vieux Carré certainly eat well. They can find some traditional jazz, and they can enjoy many different architectural styles.
It started, of course, with the French, and but as I say, the only building that has survived from the time that the French were here, as far as we know, is the old Ursuline convent. I guess most of what we call the colonial buildings were done during the Spanish period. The Cabildo and the Presbytère were done at that time. The Lemonnier House, sometimes called Sieur Georges, the first skyscraper, was built in the 1790s. After the United States took over, the whole character of the city remained French for many, many years. The majority of the population was French. Of course, Americans began to pour in great numbers, and they settled mostly above Canal Street. Well, of course, then we gradually get more of the American influence. Architects and builders adopted more American ideas in houses like the Herman Grima house, a house with a central hall and rooms on each side, and red brick. Well, the 1850s saw the introduction of cast iron galleries, which has become almost a symbol of New Orleans. I think the Pentala buildings were probably the first buildings that had cast iron galleries. The shotgun double was a favorite in New Orleans in the 1880s and 90s, and so we see a lot of them in the outskirts of the quarter. The whole idea of preservation has changed so completely, and the value of the Vieux Carré to New Orleans as a tourist attraction, as well as a very valuable historic asset to the country, has been recognized, and I think it will result in the maintenance, preservation of it, as long as the buildings themselves will stand.
The notion of the Vieux Carré becoming a Creole Disneyland is generally opposed. But how to maintain the balance of residential and commercial, thereby preserving the integrity of the Vieux Carré, yields many recommendations. Tourist money, a $2.1 billion industry, is needed in the New Orleans economy. The Vieux Carré is a National Historic District and is also under the federal auspices of the National Park Service. The Vieux Carré Commission oversees building facades. The City Council passes French Quarter ordinances. The city administration is responsible for enforcing them. But the studies of 1968 and those of the mid-1980s say more needs to be done to preserve the Vieux Carré. Recommendations deal with maintaining scale, authenticity, cleaning the streets, combating crime and noise, controlling hotel growth, and a lot more. But a consistent theme is control, through a special board or committee, or by expanding the Vieux Carré Commission's role. One study warns if the community fabric of the quarter disappears, the effect will be as disastrous as the great fires of 1788 and 1794, when the Vieux Carré almost burned to the ground. There is concern about the Vieux Carré's future life and times, but there's also hope and a firm belief in the resiliency of the old square.
Name another old city that is by and large intact and in use today, much as it has been since its founding in the early 18th century. It has adapted, it's flexible, it's resilient, it's strong, it's delightful, it's where the people landed, it's getting back to the river. The old city is today's city, and it's still alive and it's breathing.
Some ghosts in this old town. It's deja vu in the Vieux Carré. Today fades into yesterday. Vieux Carré's been so long. Vieux Carré, no song.
Stay with Channel 32 as Bill Yeager uncovers rare Creole and Acadian antiques on Louisiana.